Today's episode of Path to Power is brought to you by Greenman, an Irish investment management firm with over 20 years of experience.
Greenman Open is a European long-term investment fund, or LTIF. It's focused on grocery-anchored retail real estate. These are the kinds of properties that some investors believe remain essential even in uncertain markets. People still need to buy food. That's what they say makes this sector more resilient and more stable over the long term.
Unlike many alternative investment funds that are only available to professionals, Greenman Open is open to a wide range of investors with lower minimum investments and a highly regulated structure.
Just remember, all investments carry risk. Values can go up or down, and past performance isn't a reliable guide to future returns. Greenman Open is a regulated LTIF, but you should always speak to a financial advisor before investing. Learn more on the website greenmanopen.com.
Hello and welcome to this, our latest edition of Path to Power. I'm Matt Cooper.
And I'm Ivan Yates.
Now, the slow bicycle race that is our presidential election seems to be developing a little bit of speed this week. We're going to be talking about the positions of Fianna Fáil in particular, of Catherine Connolly after the Alan Kelly intervention in the Labour Party. We'll be talking more about the Sinn Féin position as well, with Mary Lou McDonald saying they're going to wait till the 20th of September before deciding on who the candidate will be, and also a little bit more on the independents and whether they'll get through the councils. That guy Garrett Sheridan, Nick Delahanty has pushed himself forward as well, and where is Peter Casey? All of that and more to come in this edition of Path to Power. But let's start, Ivan, with the Fianna Fáil position, because during the week various names started coming out. Shifra O'Leary, who legal background, never heard of her before, no offence to her, which made me wonder how would she actually fly given how little was known about her. Louise Richardson, another academic overseas, did do a job for the government recently, and then of course her position on NATO became a major issue. Never saw that as being a runner or a flyer. But over the weekend you texted me very excitedly, you had the news before it broke in the media, that Jim Gavin, the former Dublin senior football manager, was emerging as a preferred candidate for Fianna Fáil. And that seems to have excited Billy Kelleher, the Cork-based MEP in particular, and it suggests that we may have a competition and that the party leader for Fianna Fáil, Micheál Martin, may endorse the Dublin man, Jim Gavin, over his fellow Cork native and long-standing party activist Billy Kelleher. What's your assessment of all of this?
Well, first of all, on Sunday morning, I went for one of those walks to lose my mind and find my soul. Do you know those kind of 2-hour walks? And in the middle of it, a friend of mine from the law library texts me to say that I'm hearing reliably that Jim Gavin is going to get the Fianna Fáil nomination with the support of the leader. And so I thought about it, and I thought about, because this to me was a new name. Pádraig Ó Céad was the last name that I had heard from reliable sources, but obviously things were starting to get urgent because the local authorities are now convening meetings. There are up to 10 independents looking for council nominations. So what are the Fianna Fáil councillors to do? Do they have skin in the game with a candidate? And all the while, FFHQ and Micheál Martin, who was sort of locked away in Court-McSherry on holidays, saying, no, we'll say in September. And a vacuum will always be filled in politics. So Jim Gavin immediately was a horse of a different colour to all the different names we've discussed, Joe Duffy and right across the board. First of all, he is a national figure. 6 All-Irelands in a row, 2012 to 2019. But not only that, and all that Dublin Bannister bit, unbelievable success. And I would say, there'd been other people in that ilk, but basically, no one with the public service record he had. If I think of Heffo, I think of Cody, I think of Sean Boylan, I think of Mick O'Dwyer. I never saw them as kind of imbued with the sense of public service. They were either entrepreneurial or teacher types, whereas he has had a distinguished career, first of all in the commandant in the Defence Forces, then move into the Aviation Authority, where effectively he's been the boss of civil aviation for a couple of decades. Last year promoted to Deputy Chief Executive there in a public competition. But not only that, but he may have saved Gaelic football in terms of the new rules and the pointers and all of that good stuff.
That wasn't a solo effort on his part. In fairness, no, there were others involved in the committee, but he did chair the committee and he was the front man and the rest of it. There are other things that he has been involved in, the North Inner City Task Force. Yep. He was also involved in relation to the
Citizens'
Assembly about the directly elected mayor for Dublin, something which actually isn't happening. He has that track record. I just wonder how well known he is beyond GAA circles. Let's not forget there's an enormous amount of people have zero interest in Gaelic games and would not appreciate his success or achievements within that. And jokingly, as one person said to me, well, if he runs, there won't be a single vote for him in Mayo, given the way Dublin has beaten Mayo over the years. Jarlath Burns was the GAA person a lot of people were talking about. A figure as the president of the GAA felt that he would be a good candidate for Sinn Féin. I always said to you that wouldn't happen because the timing was wrong, that he would see out his term as president of the GAA before considering a run for president of the country. So Jim Gavin is a candidate with a degree of heft, but I just do wonder two things. One, as to how well known he actually is. And secondly, as to within Fianna Fáil, will there be people in the parliamentary party in particular who will think, hang on a second, why are we going outside our ranks? Why don't we take one of our number? Which is what makes Billy Kelleher's position interesting. Although I suspect that being a member of the European Parliament makes him a little bit semi-detached in that respect. And also the fact that he never went beyond the ranks of junior minister would also suggest, is he a serious enough, heavyweight enough candidate to carry the party's colours in a presidential election?
Well, just to finish out on Jim Gavin first, his North East Inner City Task Force that he chairs, I think is significant. I think they have very ambitious plans for Mountjoy. But I've heard anecdotes of him walking around some of the toughest parts of the inner city, meeting everyone from drug dealers to migrants and so on, and has a vision and a real commitment to it. I think Jim Gavin is one of the best known people in the country. I think the GAA is the largest voluntary community organisation in the country. I think when you look at someone like Sean Kelly's vote, that tells you it reaches into every tentacles. But put it like this, the thing you have with Heather Humphreys and Catherine Connolly, how will they do in Dublin? Dublin is by far, it's a third, the greater Dublin area is a third of the country. It is 12 constituencies. So that's a hell of a start if he's the only Dublin candidate. So in my view, so it was quite funny because then I thought about it for about 40 minutes and then I said, okay, I'll bounce it off. So one of the smartest people...
You bounced it off your bookies?
I picked three of the most inveterate Fianna Fáil TDs that gossip, because then I knew, I'm telling you reliably, this has come from the right source. And I knew that'll get the front pages of because they don't hold their water very strongly. And I knew that would create a real impetus for it. And needless to say, the Irish Independent led on Monday with that, notwithstanding some interesting stuff from
those three
Jennifer
people that you spoke to, what did they say?
Very affirmative, very affirmative. Said he mightn't stand. Was the only... there was a story that Aon O'Riordan had approached him some time ago for Labour to stand several months ago, and he said no. But the situation was, the reaction was, if he's a definite runner, he's a definite winner. The other person that I contacted was not a Fianna Fáil person, but very astute. And he said, he rang me back. He said, I know Jimmy. And that brings me, and he said, he'll be a cracking candidate. A couple of other plus points. As we've gone through this for months, He's 55. I really think when you see our incumbent on two sticks, there isn't an appetite for a 70-year-old candidate in their 70s. And in fact, someone else told me, Ivan, they gave out to me on Monday, why are you even talking about Bertie? Do you not realise that he has a serious problem with his feet? He has to wear special with gout and so on, that he's just not capable of putting in a campaign. So the situation, and the same arose with McDowell. I just think because we've a president now in their 80s and after, 14 years, I just don't think, and I know about Trump and all that kind of thing.
Well, I'd say two things in relation to that.
On the age question?
On the age question, yeah. One is that a lot of younger people actually like the avuncular, grandfatherly type that Michael D. Higgins
but not
is.
Geriatric.
I'm glad you're the one who has the free bus pass, who's making comments like this rather than me. Okay, so I'm letting that one pass. But also a point that I made to you previously on this podcast is, which is often forgotten, is that Mary Robinson and Mary McAleese were both 46 when they became president.
Very good point. I think 50s is a perfect age. You can give a bit of energy, but you have a bit of life experience. So with Gavin, put it like this. Everyone I put it on, both inside and outside, said he was extremely credible and winnable.
So why then is Billy Kelleher, who on Claire Byrne's programme earlier in the week said he hadn't given any thought to being the presidential candidate, is suddenly interested in being one?
What I heard was, I heard on Tuesday, Wednesday, that Billy was going to throw his hat in the ring, but if the Gavin thing was serious, all predicated on Fianna Fáil needed jump leads to push them into running a candidate, to wake up, because Fianna Fáil was a very strong view. Malcolm Byrne did an interview on the This Week programme. Basically, there is a huge majority in Fianna Fáil want to contest this now that Heather Humphreys is in the field. So he actually was ticking the box of forcing the party, because Mary Hanafin sent a letter to every member of the parliamentary party saying, I've been to Bloom and here's my CV, and it cut no ice whatsoever. Peter Power's not cutting any ice, nor is anyone else. Here was someone who was doing it. So anyway, what I was told was on Wednesday, Billy rang the real Taoiseach, Deirdre Gillan, and said, this is my intention of what I'm going to do. And she says, okay, apparently. And the hearsay is that maybe Micheál will give you a call. So they had a call. And with each passing hour, Billy was affirming and asserting in his own head he was definitely going to go for this. And someone said to me he would withdraw. They rang me back last night to say under no circumstances is he going to withdraw. But they said he would be beaten. So what happened last night, it was quite dramatic.
We say this, we're recording this on a Friday morning.
Yeah, so I got a number of texts. You won't believe it. Jack Chambers has been appointed Director of Elections and he has been hammering the phones all evening. Then I heard a number of ministers and backbenchers and chairs of committee had got personal calls from Micheál Martin, all banging the phones on behalf of Gavin. So that tells me, in our wonderful way of democracy and nomination systems, this is a slam dunk for Jim. And I've been intrigued because when the second, after sending the 5 texts, my second reflex was to check with the bookies. And there was not one quotation of a price for him. On Monday, there was a price of 25 to 1. I told people to get stuck into that. I told them yesterday to get stuck into 7.5 to 1, 15 to 2. I would bet it, and we'll go through all of them, I would bet it, to cut to the chase, I would bet it, if you asked me to compile a book, I'd say 5 to 4 Jim Gavin to be the next president, 7 to 4 Heather Humphreys, 5 to 1 whoever is the Sinn Féin nominee, 12 to 1 Catherine Connolly, 12 to 1 Billy Kelleher, and 100 to 1 Barr. That's the way I would bet it at the moment. Just to give you a sort of landscape view, because we're going to dive into all of those. But put it like this. This guy, like, did I think Sean Dorgan would come down and pull this type of rabbit out of the hat? He's an exceptional candidate, in my opinion.
You think this is down to Sean Dorgan, do you?
Well,
General Secretary.
I heard James Lawless's name had been involved in talks and different people involved in talks. But put it like this, at the end of the day, if Fianna Fáil fecked up and had no candidate, sure, Sean would be blamed.
Of course, a week ago, suddenly Bertie's name was back in the frame, and there was a poll, I think, done by Virgin Media Television, which had half of the parliamentary party in favour of Bertie Ahern. And then I was at the college's American football game last Saturday, and next thing a text came in to me saying that Bertie was on for it, that he was going for it. Now, what had happened was that it had been an old podcast that his son-in-law, Nicky Byrne, had done with him 8 months ago, which Nicky Byrne decided to reissue last weekend. And some people were seeing that as being a sort of...
Did you listen to it?
No, I didn't.
I did listen to it. He actually said, what he said was, and in a few sentences, he said, first of all, the actual job, having been a member of the Council of State, having seen close up how the presidency works in the weekly meeting with the Taoiseach, I could do the job as well as anyone else. But then he went on to say he would not run unless he felt he could win, so therefore he would not run as an independent. Secondly, would he get the nomination? I've been telling you all summer, no, under Micheál Martin. So then he said, look, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. And the other question is, at 74, 75, do I want to spend the next several years of my life, whatever's left, doing this? And I got clearly from that, you know what, this guy is not... Like, if Bertie was all in, you would know it.
But Micheál Martin most certainly was not all in, and Micheál Martin had decided...
He was all out.
Oh, absolutely. Micheál Martin saw the whole thing about resurrecting all of the issues in relation to the Mahon Tribunal and the bank accounts and winning it on bets and the rest of it. But as I've said to you last week, and this has become more apparent to me over the last week or so as well, there's a younger generation of people who blame their current financial woes, but unable to buy a house, what they saw happen to their parents' generation, on Bertie Ahern and his stewardship of the economy. And many of these people actually are people who would be quite strongly supportive of Sinn Féin that I know of. And they can put aside Sinn Féin's past and support for the IRA and all of those things, but they can't put aside Bertie Ahern's past. And that, in some respects, I think would have been more difficult for Bertie Ahern to defend than any Sinn Féin candidate from the past, be it somebody like a Jerry Adams or whatever, who clearly isn't going to be going forward.
So my firm prediction is that there will be a contest in Fianna Fáil, which I think is a good thing. It gets everyone going. It certainly got Jack and Micheál going on the phones. And you can take it, all their acolytes will all be faced in that direction. Like, how could you invite someone to stand and then not be able to deliver a nomination? Go figure. Like, that's just not credible. Billy Kelleher also, his appeal outside of the Munster constituency, outside of Cork, is difficult. I like Billy. He's been a TD from 97 to, what was it, 2014 when he became an MEP, former Junior Minister for Labour Affairs. But put it like this, he has not got the nationwide appeal or, you know, the whole sort of extra dimension of the GAA. But, like, you know, I would say also not to, like, if I was to say, okay, give me reasons why Jim won't be elected, right? The only one I could say, so I've done about 3 gigs with him, laterally, with Jarlath Burns in the Stillorgan Park Hotel on a Wexford GAA fundraising thing, less than a year ago. And Jim would give you his number and he'd be all over you and he'd be very chatty. And you could text him next week, you know, thanks very much, or say something like that. He would never reply to your text, right? He does not suffer fools gladly. He's a meticulously organised person. He's a deeply professional person. Now, as I keep telling you, one of the political skills, the people skills, is the plum-mossing and the backslapping and the charming. So I'd be interested to see someone else told me he was in Leopardstown a couple of Thursdays ago doing a charity gig, and he stood in for every selfie, and he is there all. It was a kind of GAA crossover for a charity. A friend of mine, he's a good friend of Pascal Taggart's, and he was telling me all about him. But Pascal even said, even though I'm a close friend and he did this charity gig for him, I wouldn't text him to ask him about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is a standoffish element to him, like that military side. And he, you know, like a lot of people in the Dublin camp, the reason he was so successful was because he was so strict. So I just wonder how that kind of disciplinarian approach, which I think would be good in a president, right, how it will be in a candidate.
You've just reminded me of something I'd forgotten about, actually. When, back after they won the All-Ireland in 2019, Jim and myself did a charity event for Down Syndrome Ireland. And I'd never met him before that. And we did a thing on stage and I was chatting to him about his future plans and the rest of it. And I finished and went back to do the last word. And while I was on air in the last word came through that he had resigned as Dublin football manager. And I had been on stage with him a couple of hours earlier. And
shows how close you were.
For the love of God, I felt like an awful fucking idiot anyway, which I did say to him the next time I saw him. Jesus, thanks for giving me the scoop on that one anyway. I'm on stage with you asking you all the questions about your future. But I do agree with you that he'd be
a good president, I think.
Cautious and careful and the rest of it, you know.
I know, but you know that whole commander-in-chief thing? He has, like, I put it like this, I fell foul of him because I would be often taking the piss out of the army, you know, square bashing, and we couldn't defend anything, and sort of running down and making a skit of the defence forces, which for real military people, they find it very...
offensive.
Oh, absolutely. And he found it offensive.
And wasn't afraid to tell you.
Oh, well, put it like this. He didn't have to, you know what I mean? Like, I would just know it. But put it like this, let it play out. But the other big development
is one we're going to get to once we've taken our break.
This episode of Path to Power is brought to you by Greenman, an Irish investment management firm. Greenman Open focuses on investing in grocery-anchored retail real estate, designed to generate stable, long-term income. The fund is managed in Ireland. Learn more on the website greenmanopen.com.
Now, before making any investment, it's important to understand the risks. Investments could go up or down, and past performance is not a reliable guide to future results. Greenman Open is a regulated LTIF, but like all investments, it carries risks. You should always seek advice from a financial professional before investing. Welcome back to Path to Power. Don't forget, we have a subscription edition as well. If you want more of Ivan and myself talking about all the political events of the week, and we have lots in this week's subscription edition which are non-presidential related. So pathtopowerpodcast.com is the website address. You can easily manage to upload and click on Apple, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to this particular podcast. So let's get back to the political debate, because we've done Fianna Fáil about relation to the presidency. I want to talk a little while about the independents who don't have the nomination, but let's start with, and we will talk about Sinn Féin as well, but let's talk about the independent who does have the nomination and the consternation that this has caused within the Labour Party. Because previously Fergus Finlay had come out, a grandee of the Labour Party, so to speak, key advisor to Dick Spring in the past, a man who had on a couple of occasions sought the Labour Party nomination for the presidency. He was the first to say, why are we supporting this woman, Catherine Connolly? She dumped us. She has never been nice to us since. Why are we supporting her? And Alan Kelly, who... certainly since he lost the leadership of the Labour Party due to an internal coup, most certainly has not gone away. Very strongly came out this week and said, we shouldn't have endorsed her. I won't be voting for her. What did you make of this?
Well, it was quite funny. Two people said, take a listen, send me a text, and they sent me a copy of the interview. And it was about 30 minutes long. And
this is on Tip FM?
Yes, Tip FM with a guy called Fran. And so anyway, they said, start listening from 3 minutes and 40 seconds in. So anyway, I dutifully fast forwarded to that. This, I think, was Wednesday evening. And, well, he did it really skillfully. I mean, like when you're going to knife someone and then go on to gut them, right? To gut them like a fish. Like you start off with the kind of soft manoeuvres, like saying, well, you know, she's not a Labour candidate. She's not a Labour nominee. We only had 13 members of the Oireachtas. So therefore, the fact that I didn't vote for her to support her campaign is not treachery for the Labour Party. There were divided views. Then he quoted the line from Fergus Finlay, what has she ever done to deserve a nomination? She's you know, consorted with Mick Wallace and Claire Daly. She's gone to Syria. She's, you know, done this, that and the other, all the stuff that we've discussed here. And he played it casual enough, and, you know, like it was clearly that there was, you know, kind of reminders of his own past in March 22 when he was shafted by Vanna Bacik. And the classic timing of this, because on the very same day, what was Bacik doing? doing a TikTok and an Instagram and a social media thing. Here I am at TCD, where she's lectured and, you know, all that good law library stuff and all that kind of thing. And I'm here with my friend Catherine Connolly, blah, 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 how fantastic she is. And here we are at the seat of learning and all this. And then this Exocet comes in from AK-47. And basically, where he put the knife in was something that you have alluded to, was what happened in 2018. What happened was, out of a clear blue sky, Catherine Connolly supported the nomination of Gemma O'Doherty. And then he put the knife in and he said, and my good friend, a friend for 40 years, a stalwart of the Labour Party, Michael D. Higgins. Like, she couldn't see fit to support the nomination of Michael D. when he was incumbent. And what someone who was against...
She wanted to take him out.
Exactly. And so this is the real message. If you're a Labour Party supporter and if you like Michael D., do not think she is the Michael D. candidate in this election, which is very damaging. So leaving aside the 4 or 10% of Labour supporters, really, the marker was put down. She is not Michael D. Mark II. And any resonance, in other words, what he was actually saying was, I don't know if you asked Michael D, would he endorse Catherine Connolly? I don't think she would. That's what he meant to say. But he was very subtle about the way he put it across.
So Alan Kelly has at times subtlety. Everyone thinks of him as sort of a bull in the china shop rushing in, but he's cleverer than that.
And the way he dragged you, and then he said, one of the things that I have fought very hard was, who was the poor lady from Limerick? You've interviewed her many times. She passed away with the Hep C.
Vicky Phelan.
Vicky Phelan. And he started to speak about Vicky Phelan. And you know,
and in fairness, he actually spent an enormous amount of time supporting Vicky Phelan.
You know how strongly I feel with this. And what did the person who Catherine Connolly nominated, Gemma O'Doherty, do? She was anti-Hep vaccine.
Cervical cancer vaccine.
So and like put it like this: there wasn't a shred left on Catherine Connolly. So that brings us on to the point that.
Well, sorry, can I just add to that? There was a very interesting piece, Friday morning's Irish Times, by Justine McCarthy, who's one of their most insightful columnists, and she really took issue with a lot of Catherine Connolly's behaviour and very much brought up her friendship with Mick Wallace and Claire Daly, and raised a prospect in the last paragraph which I hadn't thought of, and it just went, whoa. I mean, what about the possibility, given that she has spoken about them being her close friends and political allies, that they would be her nominees to the Council of State? So maybe...
And let's be fair, Justine would be seen as a left-wing commentator.
I suppose
left
you
of
could
centre,
say left of centre.
She'd be supporting a left candidate.
Yeah, social justice and everything
and
like that.
And another line Kelly had, which was devastating. And, well, is she left-wing? Some of these ones are so far left, they're nearly right. This is circular, he said, which I thought was another dig at this, the Syrian Bashar Assad regime and so on. So I'll put it like this. I thought it was really damaging. And that brings us on to the remaining part of the jigsaw. So you have Catherine Connolly, you have Heather Humphreys and Jim Gavin, in my opinion. And then what is Sinn Féin going to do? Well, I have to call this as I see it, in my opinion. Mary Lou came back from her holidays and did an interview with Jane Matthews for The Journal. And she was asked the question, well, what are you going to do about the presidency? Are you going to support Catherine Connolly? No, maybe. Don't know. Are you going to run your own candidate? No. Are you going to run yourself? And so we've had 4 to 5 months since April of this, where she has indulged herself in the most self-indulgent manner about her own candidacy. She has neither given any leadership, neither led nor drive the party. A party with 38 TDs, a really serious alternative government leader. And they're going to make a decision, not at their retreat on the 8th of September, but on the 20th of September. And I'm looking at polling day, perhaps the 24th of October. It is nonsensical. And I think in the whole tenure of her leadership period, this will go down as her worst period, where she couldn't make a decision to save her life. And what's now happened? Now with the emergence of Gavin and the consolidation of Heather Humphreys and Catherine Connolly, they're going to be forced to run a candidate. So they're actually scrambling around now to see can they get Pierce Doherty, because the other person they had put forward, Rose Conway Walsh from Belmullet, very nice, one of the nicest people in politics. She was often on the Tonight Show, were a really likeable person. But put it like this, both geography and profile, really not a heavyweight candidate. I've told you all along, Mary Lou is not going to be a candidate, and she has left the party in a complete mess. You know, having had a poor local elections, a little bit better, but a disappointing general election, she has literally dropped the ball.
Hold on a second now. Would it not be fairer to say that she saved them in the general election? And I know I was very critical of their overall performance, the fact that they had lost a significant percentage share in the vote by comparison with the previous election. However, between the local European elections last year and the general election, there was a certain degree of they had to save themselves. And if it hadn't been for Mary Lou McDonald, they wouldn't have had the performance that they did have in the general election last year.
Totally accept that. Okay? My criticism is what's happened from April to now.
But I'll just go a little bit further than that. I think the problem, which all of the political parties have, but that Sinn Féin have in particular, is a lack of heavyweight candidates. There's actually not a lot of high-profile people with a sustained contribution who can be brought forward and said, this is a person who should be president.
Well, Michelle O'Neill does take that box.
But except she would have the handicap of, wrongly in my view, of being regarded as somebody from outside the state.
No, but if like in every interview, every Sinn Féin person has done, the candidate will have to embody their number one priority, which is unity, a border poll, and this will be the last time the people in the 6 counties.
I was telling you that for months.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that, I still wouldn't rule out the possibility of Mary Lou McDonald.
No, but sorry, why are we still cogitating this? Insofar as that you had 5 months to make up your mind, you're now running out of time, you've left a vacuum on the left, and you actually are no clearer today than you were in April when you first put up this kite. That is not great leadership. This, when you're looking at an opposition party looking to consolidate its position as leadership role of the opposition and of the left, they have, it's the most abject failure of leadership on our part.
The Mary Lou McDonald kite, as you describe it, came way later than April. Back in April, she was saying she wasn't going to be going for it. It wasn't until a couple of months ago that they opened the door for the possibility that she would. And she's done little to discourage since. She's left it very much open in the speeches she's been making. I'm interested in the idea of Pierce Doherty coming forward.
And Jerry Adams, but they're scrambling now because this was never part of the plan.
I don't see Pierce Doherty being a strong candidate. If he was to be the thing, I think...
well, to get out the Sinn Féin vote is really...
Well, to get out the Sinn Féin vote, but I don't see him as a candidate who'd win. I might be unfair in that, but
the fact is, if Sinn Féin were going to win this, they needed to get... to actually have a lead, to actually do what Catherine Connolly did, to get out in front and try and consolidate whatever vote you can behind you. But she has literally been sleepwalking. But I mean, she just has given no leadership. This is irrespective of whether she stands or not. She's actually dithered, and she's proposing to dither right through the September retreat. It is actually abject failure of leadership.
Let's talk a little bit about the independents. You had quite the cut at that fella Garrett Sheridan recently.
But you edited out the best bits, I'm told. I had some very choice remarks.
Yes. Anyway, okay, you can take your own legal responsibility if I don't cut these things out for you.
Yeah. I think his candidacy is very dubious insofar as
I don't think he's going to get a nomination.
No, not only that, although yesterday he sent a message that he's one of the finalists for the EY Entrepreneur of the Year.
No, sorry, I thought he was a judge having previously.
No, he was a finalist, but he's now pulled out of the competition.
Oh, right.
So they get into the interview stage of that, and basically he was down in Killarney with other finalists yesterday, and he sent a message to me from one of the other finalists, who's a good friend of mine from Wexford, and to say that tell Ivan I have 10 councils lined up.
No, he tended to actually make a pitch to them.
So, given what we've talked about, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil having a lot of skin in the game, unlike in 2011 and particularly 2018, where they were amenable to this. Now, let's be clear. Councillors don't take orders from HQ very well, and there is a wild card element to them. But I actually think, so I text someone I really trust in Tipperary, and I said, just tell me, do you think Gareth Sheridan will get a nomination? Because he cited Tipperary as his best chance, and he's just said, in my opinion, he won't. So
what about Nick Delahanty?
I want to come to him.
Who is from Tipperary.
Yeah.
Who was schooled at the exclusive Clongowes College, which I think, with the exception of the school you went to, is the most expensive boarding school in the country. Very much for the sort of the elite Catholics, Jesuit educated. He's a barrister who stood in the local elections unsuccessfully, who stood in the general election in my constituency, Dublin Bay South, unsuccessfully. I think he was trumpeting that he got more votes than Kate O'Connell, the independent. I don't see how, given his track record, he could believe that he has any shot at becoming president. So what is he really up to?
Well, I on a podcast, I said, I don't know anything about Nick Delahanty. He, on my radar for Dublin Bay South, he didn't really feature, being in the frame for a seat. So anyway, there was a PR company rang me and said, you're missing a trick with Nick Delahanty. And I said, look, send me a 2-pager on his CV. And actually, from kind of, you have a kind of thing that has been a bad habit of mine, that there's been these kind of fringe candidates. Let me name them. People like Gavin Pepper, Malachy Steenson, and Mick O'Keefe. And some of them got elected to the council, and they didn't do very well. They made no penetration. And I kind of have this kind of thing that these are people, extreme right, anti-immigrant and all this kind of thing. And I presumed he was in this category. And that would be absolutely wrong. For 10 years, he had a proper job as a corporate solicitor with A&L Goodbody and with Arthur Cox. He was an expert in corporate law, doing M&A, doing ICAVs, REITs, all these SPVs and so on. He left that 3 years ago, and, his motivation was when he saw these special tax vehicles for IPAS centres, he felt it was too much. But he has a successful business called Barclays, a dog daycare business.
Oh, so he's into dog whistling.
Well, put it like this: he's into dog care. Okay. So no, but the point, he employs 11 people. But then I looked in the Dublin Bay South. Right, he got 2,272 votes, and he did finish ahead of Kate O'Connell. And his preferences actually ensured the election of Jim O'Callaghan. And I actually, when I went through this. And you got the whole education piece and all the rest of it. He's actually really puts on his thing how he's a keen racing person and all that.
Oh, so then you love him. Just because he's expressed a love of horse racing, suddenly he's all right with Ivan, isn't it?
No, but he's not a people before profit. He's not a migrationist. And some of the issues he's pursued, like making crime illegal in terms of the revolving door and the criminal justice system, were actually valid points. My point is this. He's going nowhere for the presidency, but actually I could see him taking Owen Hayes' seat in Dublin Bay South in a future election. I liked the cut of his jib. I knew nothing about him, and actually he is not your usual whack job.
Not your usual whack job. Is this because he comes from a posher background?
Yes.
He's more acceptable to you, is it?
No, he's more PD. In Dublin Bay South, that goes a long way. He's from Ringsend. The point is
he's not from Ringsend. He's from a very wealthy background down in Tipperary. I know he says he's son of a pig farmer, but I think it's extensive holdings.
No. But the point is this: that he is not your protesting left-wing person. That is just not his ticket. And I put it like this: sometimes I tend to dismiss some of those people, and the electorate tends to dismiss them. But can I go back to Tipperary, please? Which is that, so anyway, I checked into Tipperary. So basically, they have a special meeting set up. And I wouldn't call this a nomination proposer and say, this is speed dating. They actually have 10 candidates: Dominic Plant, Sheridan, Cora Stack, Josephine Chiluke Obe, Nick Delahanty, Sarah Louise Mulligan, Charlotte Keenan, Paddy Deneen, Barry Wheely Rowe, and Lorna McCormick. Sure, when you're faced with that kind of circus for 5 minutes and then 10 minutes for joint questions, Sure, look, anyone who's naive enough to think, like, what did I tell you during the Senate election? And like, I have to be careful what I'm saying because I'm doing the Lama Awards next February.
What's the Lama Awards?
My tribe, the Local Authority Members Association, all the top councillors and professional councillors. And I said, I remember speaking to Senate candidates, very distinguished people, but who weren't from the political set. And I said, how many votes are you going to get? Oh, I'm confident I'll get 52. I said, what's the minimum votes you'll get? 26. They got single digits. The fact of the matter is, the electorate of councillors is the most complex, shall we just say, I could say the word treacherous, of all the ones. So needless to say, they'll come in and have a cup of tea, Mr. Sheridan. I saw you on the telly and all this kind of... Are they going to vote for him? Not in 100 years. The minute his arse has turned out the door, they're saying, where does he think he's going? And the other thing is this, in the Senate campaign, if you look back at it, because Cathal Byrne told me, he topped the poll in the culture and education. He was defeated for Fine Gael from Wexford, and he said to me, the first question a councillor asked you, he'd never stood for the Senate before. Tell me this now, were you a councillor? Oh, I was. And you stood for the council and all this kind of thing. What they really think of all these would you ever stand for the local election? No. In other words, down at our level, it's, tier 3, it's beneath you. You're only interested in the top job. They have contempt for some of these candidates because they're not grassroots democracy people, and they're going to get a pretty shirty response, in my opinion. There's 10 local authorities out of 31 in play.
The local authorities, where's your mate Peter Casey? Good
question. Peter sent me 2 epistles. One which he, CC of what he sent to every councillor. Previously, he had told me that he was going for Donegal. Now, he has form here, and I asked him one question. I texted him back and said one question. Is there any difference between this time? I think he got a handful of nominations. He got more than the 4 the last time, and he finished second on 30-odd% of the vote. That was a very respectable showing. And so he said, it's going very well, you know what I mean? Which doesn't answer the question, is the mood music amongst the councils for a nomination different this time, because Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are contesting it, whereas they weren't previously. So but the bottom line is, I actually don't know how he's going, but my opinion is he's not going great. But he actually texted me to say, for the first time in the podcast, I have to agree with something Matt Cooper said. I nearly dropped the phone. I said, what's that? Your remarks about the Indian community.
Yes.
He his close links with business links in India, the steel industry.
Yeah.
Tata, is it, or something like that? Like that whole family is part, and he wrote a book about it and all the rest of it. So you ticked his box with saying nice things about the Indians anyway. So my summing up of the whole thing is that all of those are no-hopers. And you know what? It's like putting a dog down. You're doing them a favour by not nominating them. They're going to blow 6-figure sum. They're not going to get their expenses back. They're not going to get 12.5%, and they're saving them time and grief.
Okay, we're coming to the end of this edition. Just to say, in the subscriber edition as well, earlier this morning I was talking to Michael O'Leary of Ryanair in relation to some of the comments that we've made on this podcast in relation to the Metro. He was in touch with me about that. So we'll do that on the subscription edition.
I have one other political story of the week, okay, which is tangential, right? We have lots of other stories, and I want to talk about the Corporate Enforcement Authority and very disquieting things. I mean, Jennifer Carroll McNeil goes down to Bale-na-Blaw on Sunday and makes the oration. And I'm always looking for people on manoeuvres, because we spoke about blue smoke coming out of the engine of, that is, the politics of Simon Harris and his woes with Harvey and all the rest of it. And fair play to Jennifer, she's at it. She has had more publicity in the last 7 days over the National Children's Hospital, which we can come back to.
Yeah, I actually interviewed her about that last week on The Last Word,
In 6 months, only one issue, the 7-day roster, which the HSE was doing anything. So anyway, she got this phrase from Michael Collins about thinking in long strides, quote unquote. And she reeled off her leadership position about the triple lock and how we needed to modernise our thinking in that and to be courageous always. I'm leader here. You understand the soft mood music you played to that, some stirring sort of stuff. And then she said that, this idea of objecting to solar and onshore wind farms wasn't a good idea. And then She couldn't, whether it was in interviews or in her speech, she couldn't resist a small comment about the scoliosis scandal and difficulties and so on, which was, the Daily Mail had a lead story on Monday, your paper, one of 6. But the point is this, attack on Simon Harris from Jennifer.
She actually had said much the same to me last Thursday's last word as it happens. But anyway,
and really laying into BAM in relation to that. What did she say to you about the NCH?
Oh, well, she was basically saying that they weren't drawing down the money that had been made available to finish off the work done. So that we might get to that actually in the subscription edition as well.
But she's on manoeuvres. Simon will be delighted.
Okay, well, one final thing. While we've been recording this, I've just had an email and a message sent to me with news from one of your other employers, News Talk.
Yeah.
Pat Kenny is leaving the morning show in early 2026 and is moving to weekend radio.
Well, first of all, can I say this? My admiration for Pat, right, and holds no... Like, he leaves Dalkey at 6:45 in his bike. What do you call those famous bike? He got it from U2. You remember when he was finishing up on the Late Late Show from Bono and all that. Harley Davidson. But anyway, he does that and he gets through the traffic. Would you believe it? Every issue, because I listened to The Last Word where you dial it in, culture club, wine club, you've just landed from Istanbul, you dial it in, yeah, okay, tell me more and all this kind of thing. He reads the books, he goes to the shows, his professionalism, and like, he's 77 years of age, and would you believe it, I had a great chat. Last Friday, we did the podcast on Thursday with his brother Paul.
Who's a former pensions ombudsman.
Yes, and is an expert on retirement. And I was asking his advice on something that I have to deal with myself. And I was saying I was going to step back from a particular thing. And he gave me really great and definite advice, not 6 of 1 half dozen. But Pat Kenny, and I said to him, geez, I'm just my admiration because, you've to maintain a curiosity and an interest in things.
I'm glad you're not ageist about him, given the ageism that you've displayed earlier in this programme in relation to the presidency. I don't actually know Pat Kenny particularly well at all.
He launched my book for me back in the previous book in 2014.
I would have only been a very occasional contributor to his RTE shows back in the past before I joined Today FM. As you know, Today FM and News Talk don't have particularly much interaction. Yeah. We're sort of rival stations. We're both Today
FM, let me explain to the listener, is on the 5th floor or 4th floor and they look down on News Talk.
4th floor.
They were there longer, they were making money and all that kind of thing. So there's a kind of sneering looking down on
well, funnily enough, actually, as I say this...
I'm not saying necessarily by you, but maybe especially by you, I'm not sure.
Well, let me actually just share a little story and I wonder will this cause a little trouble. But there was a lot of anger in Today FM, shall we say, in the early days when News Talk came into the building after the...
this is in Dennis's time.
Dennis O'Brien's time. And when Dennis O'Brien referred to Today FM as the country cousins. And there would have been a feeling, oh, really? Well, we're the cash cow inside here. We're making the money, which is funding News Talk and the rest of it. So don't be dismissive of us. And that,
News Talk was a startup. It was a startup.
Yeah, so I think there would have been a sort of...
And it was all talk. There's no music,
Can I just finish what I was trying to say about Pat? Which is that, although I don't really know him, I would have to admire the professionalism of his career, the longevity of it. It was extraordinary. When he left RT to move to News Talk, everyone thought, my God, how is this going to work out? And it's gone on for something like 13 years. And he has become the most important part of the News Talk. He's an icon of Irish broadcasting. Absolutely. And, you have to absolutely admire. And also the fact, that he has remained interested and inquisitive into what age? He's 76, 77.
And he's so professional.
Absolutely.
I think his birthday is in January. But
I'd love to think that I might be able to go into my 70s doing it. I know you're sort of talking about wimping out of things.
I advised you 5 years ago when we started in 2017, Matt, what you should do is line yourself up to take over from Pat Kenny because there'll come a day that Today FM will want to play all music and say, good luck.
Not allowed by the licence. Not allowed by the licence.
No, but did you get my point?
And on that note, we'll end this edition of Pat to Power. We have loads more on the subscription edition, so you can get that Apple, Spotify, wherever it is you get your podcasts, all for a very bargain price of only €6 a month.
Waspish text. Why are you spending so much time talking about the presidency? No one's interested. Can't you talk about serious stuff? And I think that person will be particularly outraged by today's episode, so he should become a subscriber.
Okay, my thanks to Aidan and Tom for the production. Until the subscription edition or next week, thank you for joining us.